issue. So we kind of always have to say, what are the challenges in South Africa? And it's children not attending ECDs or children not being school ready. And then one of the other challenges is that even if children are at primary school, the PILS research shows that 80% can't read for meaning by the age of 10. So if a child is unable to read for meaning, it means they're not really learning at school.
Hello and welcome to the Impact with Insiders podcast, the podcast that explores real-life examples of people and organizations that are making an impact. My name is Bianca Dempers, an account manager at Relative Impact. I would like to introduce our guest today, Marion Wagner. Marion is a marketing specialist and the director of Breadline Africa. Through her years of experience in the sustainable development world, Marion has seen the socio-economic impact enabled through focusing on early childhood development and community upliftment. Marion has held the role as director and chair for various organizations where she led initiatives aimed at equipping children for ethical leadership, educating children on cultural diversity, supporting vulnerable children in South Africa, and promoting economic growth and sustainable development within communities. Fast forward to now, Marion has shifted her focus to Breadline Africa. As director of the organization, she celebrates 30 years of impact that Breadline has had on the lives of children and communities throughout South Africa. Marion, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's been a journey to get us together in the room, and I'm really looking forward to chatting further about this. Having worked quite closely with you and the project, this is an opportunity I've really been looking forward to. I thought let's start with a good question about your experience, your past experience. So your portfolio of experience showcases over 70 international projects. This must have taken you to some of the most interesting parts of our world. Reflecting on your travels, what would you say your favorite community was to work with?
So it's such a difficult one to answer. I was incredibly fortunate working for an international oil company, which meant that the work that I was doing led me to more than probably 50 different countries where I was doing projects across the world. And I think for me, probably the most special time was in the period between 1997 and 2000, where I was implementing a system in 20 different African countries. So they're all so incredibly different. But I think the communities, if you're asking which my favorite communities to work with, would probably come down to the people that really stood out. And those countries, they were in countries like Cape Verde, Burkina Faso, Sudan, and Madagascar. And very, very completely different countries. And I think Burkina Faso now is very different to what it was in 97, 98. But the hospitality, the kindness of the people who have incredibly little themselves, but take so much pride in their country and want to always help in any situation that they can. And the hospitality is incredible. The little they have, they want to share. So, yeah, those were countries that really stood out. And Cape Verde Islands, just from the minute I landed and got off the plane in the middle of the night, that plane was a refueling stop, and I was given permission to disembark. The captain had said, nobody ever gets off here. You sure you want to get off? And I'm like, yeah, no, this is my destination. And the airport manager held that airport open until about 2 a.m. He sat and waited. And then there's no taxi, so he drove me where I needed to go. But first we had to go past his house where he woke his wife up, and the wife then was very happy to sit and make me coffee, to chat before I eventually got through to my accommodation. But that's just the people they are. That they don't know you, but you're a visitor to their country, and they want to show the absolute best. And Burkina Faso was the same. Modes of transport are generally on the back of motorbikes. If you're walking, everybody wants to put you on the back of the motorbike or on the handlebars or the bicycle or anything that goes, and just incredibly, incredibly kind. So yeah, very, very impactful, and each one very special in their own way.
That's incredible. I feel like you've mentioned some places I don't think any of us would ever see in our life. So it's so wonderful that you got that opportunity to go and engage with those communities and experience it. But Burkina Faso is like a it's definitely a bucket list for me. I think it's one of the most beautiful countries. It's so wonderful that their communities are so proud of the space that they're in, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think,
Mm.
Madagascar was another place that it left such a mark because, we think we've got poverty in South Africa, and we do have extreme poverty. But when you see people get up at 4:30 in the morning and physically have to haul rickety carts, and the maximum they're going to earn that day is $1. And that struck me that they didn't have shoes. Their clothes weren't clothes. They were actually just rags. But everybody is just grateful that
Mhm.
they're able to do something and earn, you would think people would be so bitter and angry at tourists and hotels but and people coming in with money when they have so little. But it's not like that. They're such beautiful people.
Yeah, that's great. And the sense of community, like within the communities, and
Mm.
how these people help each other and
Each
don't just
other,
live for
exactly.
themselves, but they work together as communities.
Exactly.
It's very inspiring. Yeah, I saw that quite strongly when I spent time in Mozambique. That the smaller the communities, the less they had in terms of resources, the more of that like tight knit, you know, got each other's backs, sit together, out on the stoop and have food together and cook together. And it felt like such a strong
Yeah.
element of their day to day. It's very inspiring. I guess we could move on to a bit more about your career. So, your education and early work experience was focused on marketing and business development. Just taking a look through your LinkedIn and kind of doing a bit of a deep dive into your history. I noticed that at one point on your career timeline, you note a career break after 20 years. And it seemed that at this point, there was the shift from the corporate space more toward the community-based work. And I was very curious about what inspired the shift and paved the way to where we are right now. And if there's something you wouldn't mind sharing.
No, absolutely. I think, working internationally was fantastic, but it's never home. We're away for 11 years. And although you integrate into the communities where you live, although London is not easy to integrate to when you're living in the heart of London, you miss that friendliness and the warmth of, well, particularly South Africa and the people, and that genuine warmness. If you go to a supermarket in South Africa, we used to always say we just miss the lady at the till, the jokes, the smile. If you say hello, her face lights up. In the UK or even in Germany, if you say hello to someone at the till, they look at you as like, oh, did they leave their credit card? What are they? It's so different. It's just that, it's everything is done quickly and there isn't really time. It's all done for efficiency and effectiveness. And we have really started to miss South Africa and thought, well, should we come home? And I did a lot of fundraising in the UK for charities and different events that I undertook. And I always battled to find an organization where I could volunteer at. It's not that easy to volunteer at many of the centers. And then I thought, if I come back to South Africa, there's so much we can do. That we felt that there was a difference we could make here that we couldn't do in Europe. And I think I was just lucky because it was a returning expat assignment that gave me the choice of continuing in the corporate world or taking a break. And I was lucky to be able to say, I could take a break, and took a year off. And that year was, for my husband and I, very much deciding where can we make a difference, what is our purpose, what is our passion, what do we really want to do. And that led us to volunteering. So at first I wasn't too sure, I knew I'd love to volunteer with animals, but I would bring them all home, so it's very, very difficult. I too much of a soft spot for rescue dogs, so it was children or adults. So we decided, well, let's do both. So we volunteered at the Homestead Street Children's Shelter well, probably for 3 years, but quite a lot in the first year, where we just took them out of the center, the drop-in shelter in Cape Town, and to a park, and decided, let's play soccer with them. Then they soon realized that my soccer skills were really bad and it wasn't really that much fun to have me on their soccer team. So then we said, well, let's try cricket. Well, that wasn't much better either. And then what I realized was that many of the children couldn't swim. And that's when I learned to become a swim coach, and then got permission to get entrance to Long Street Baths. And then on a weekly basis for several years, started taking the children swimming and teaching them how to swim. So much so that some have now, become great open water swimmers, one or two of them, and have paid it forward and took over from me when they left the homestead and started their own life and career. Then now they take on the children and they teach them how to swim. So that was very rewarding. And then at the same time, also started working with homeless adults in Muizenberg and getting to know their stories and their lives and why they were on the streets, realized how complicated the homeless issue is. It's not just, people's views of we can get them off the street and into a shelter. The shelters don't take them, for more than a couple of months. And then they try and reintegrate them into families that have actually, in many cases, rejected them for a variety of circumstances and often due to addiction or mental health issues. And until you address those, you can't reintegrate back into a family. There's a lot of history. So did a lot of work with the homeless people in Muizenberg and doing, restoring dignity programs. So getting them involved, getting them some work experience, and then rewarding them with blankets or food vouchers or laundry vouchers, anything that would actually help them. And then, yeah, it was, I think that really highlighted the huge inequalities in South Africa, the huge challenges, street children and homeless adults, broken communities. And one of the biggest things as well is access to education. So although street children miss out a huge amount of education because they rather live on the streets than face the home environments that they're in, they obviously then don't get access to any schools. So their education often gets picked up when they're a lot older. So they've missed the basics. And that's when I then started working in nonprofit sector, particularly in areas around children and communities. But it's a massive eye opener, and we actually felt that that's really what gave us purpose.
You mentioned about how it's not as easy to volunteer in Europe. And I was wondering, did you and your husband or you manage to do any volunteering work when you were still staying in the UK? Yeah, and what that looked like if you did manage to.
There are soup kitchens that you can volunteer at, but it was difficult to find something that could fit in with a work environment and where you didn't have to jump through a massive amount of hoops in order to be able to do it. And there are so many people putting their hands up to volunteer in the UK. Obviously, just massive inequalities are so different. But I think where we found we could do work is on fundraising. So I did the 24-hour Three Peaks challenge for Amnesty, and then I did the London Arch to Arc, from London to Arc de Triomphe, and we took a team and we swam the channel and cycled into Paris, and that raised a huge amount of money for the homeless center in central London. So that was one way we found that we could make a difference. But yeah, hands-on, it was difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, those creative solutions are, it took you to see and experience things that many people don't get the opportunity to. So great thinking.
Yeah,
out the box there.
jellyfish in the English Channel and
Yeah.
big boats. No, it was a fantastic experience.
Are you still doing any open water swimming now? This is completely side note. Do you still do
I
any swimming?
was never great at doing open water. I tend to, so when we did the channel, we did it wetsuited, but we knew we weren't going to break any records for even swimming in wetsuits. So we relayed, and it made a huge difference because we did this over 36 hours nonstop. So to do 12 hours in the channel and then another 12 hours of cycling, and then you're freezing cold, etc. And the jellyfish, it helped a lot. And there are a huge number of jellyfish in the English Channel. So yes, I've taught open water swimming, but it's not my most favorite thing at all. No. I love it if it's warm water and I can see and it's not shark infested water, then I'm very comfortable. But so I tend to sort of stick to lakes here rather than sea.
Yeah, indoor pools. Tick all the boxes. Actually, someone was telling me a story the other day. I can't recall who it was, about a lady who had also wanted to do an open water swim for a charity organization, and part of the part of the agreement for funding was that no one could assist you in the open water swim. So, if anything happened, you started to get from A to B without assistance. And she got absolutely smacked by jellyfish everywhere. They were apparently on her face. She had to like peel them off. And she still did it. She still swam. She still finished. Like it's it's crazy.
Yeah,
The
it's remarkable.
determination and the strength that people have when they put their mind to, a cause or a goal. It's just really, it's
Yeah, and then when you
industry
do it for a
comes
purpose and
from.
you know that
Mm,
yeah, you're raising funds, and it does motivate you hugely. You sort of set
yeah.
this target, and you've got other beneficiaries that are really going to value the outcome. It actually it spurs you on. It makes you think, come on, what
Mm.
they're going through is a huge amount more than the short period of discomfort that you've got now.
Yeah, and you have that ability to just really dig a bit deeper for that strength. The human body and spirit is remarkable.
Mm.
Another point that when we were chatting now that came to light and that I found really interesting is that a lot of your community work, your stories are quite personable, and you really seem to spend time getting to know the community. Do you think that you still have that opportunity now in Breadline to be able to be like really personable with the communities? Because I can imagine that you quite busy, but it's just a really interesting point with as you were chatting through the community work that you've done. It feels very personal and very close to home.
We're incredibly lucky. I mean, we work in some incredible communities, and whenever I get a chance, I will go out to site. If there are launches, I'll always go out and meet the children, the parents, the teachers. I mean, these are remarkable people who work for so little money, particularly in the ECD sector, where a lot of the principals don't get the government subsidy. And a lot of parents can't pay the fees, even if it's just 150 Rand a month. So the principal is, in many cases, paying for the center out of her own pocket, and the teachers are staying despite ridiculously low salaries. And these are remarkable people that work in areas where nobody really thanks them. They're unseen. And there's over 200,000 people that work in the ECD space in South Africa, and many of these are just amazing, predominantly females that are making such a difference. And everyone I meet is incredibly special. And
Mm.
many have been going, gosh, some of them are already in their late 60s and with such energy, and they don't stop. They just keep at it. And when things are really tough, they dig deep, and they somehow always seem to get through. So yeah, very lucky in different parts of the country. And also, more recently now with the working more in the primary schools with the pit toilet replacements as well, and some of the more rural areas. And again, getting the chance to speak to parents and the difference that the pit toilet replacements have made to the parents is something that we actually didn't really understand at that level. That when the parent sees their child after school in the morning, that fear of, if that is that child going to come home, or is that child going to drown in a pit toilet, is something that no parent should have to even think of when you send your child to school, that safety element. So
Yes.
yes, it's lovely, and it's, of course, it's always, when we do our launches, it's always a celebration, and so you always see, like, such a positive side of it. So it's very uplifting.
Yeah, I can imagine to still have that, like still be able to engage on such a personal level with the communities. Must really, keep your passion alive, and that's why we're seeing the work we see through the work that you guys are doing. So the impact that we're seeing. So that actually leads me into the next question that I have. And just reflecting on our interactions that you and I have had, and then the work that I've been very privileged to do with you and the Breadline team. And, just continuing on this conversation about your passion and the care and personability you have with communities. Many of our conversations have been about eradicating pit latrines, the passion and determination you have to really get rid of every single pit latrine in South Africa. And Again, reflecting back on your really close engagement with communities, and I was curious as to if there was something personal for you that sparked the drive that we now see towards replacing pit latrines.
It is, yes, I think it's, no child should have to die in a pit toilet. It just shouldn't happen. Not now. It shouldn't have happened 100 years ago. And many of these schools just haven't been fixed. In 2017, there was a child that had drowned. And at that stage, we were saying, what can we as an organization do? Can we tackle this? And we do a lot of, or over the years, we've done a lot of replacement of pit toilets and buckets at ECD centers. So it was like, if we do it there, well, we can do it on a bigger scale at a primary school. Why don't we do it? And in 2017, we were a bit nervous about, how do we get in with the Department of Basic Education? Will we get accepted? Is this too big for us? We're still quite a small team then. So we said, well, we'll hold off and then we'll tackle it again. And then this year, in March, when there was another drowning, that's really what sparked it. And we sort of said, no, this is crazy. Let's do something. We can do this. We've got the experience, we've got 30 years of experience. We've done toilet infrastructure. Let's get out there and see if we can actually make a difference. And that's really how it started in March. And it was just complete coincidence then, I think at that time, that we also saw Mark Barnes's Twitter post about, calling the government to action on this and committing that he would give 100,000 Rand in a day's labor. So, I picked up the phone and chatted to him and said, can I have your 100,000? Let's start. And he was like, no, I'm not giving it to you. This was just a call to action, but I would if I find the right partner. And then within a week later, we had signed a partnership agreement and said, let's try and tackle this together. Let's use your strengths and your network, and let's use our, infrastructure experience, and let's get going. And we've done 5 schools to date, and we're hopefully going to be doing another 3 in January. So the 5 are all being in KZN schools, and we're pushing more into rural areas. The ones that we're going to be doing in January, hopefully, are very remote Eastern Cape area, and 2 in Limpopo. So it'd be great to try and spread out. And yeah, so I think for us, that having seen the toilets, I mean, I don't think you can actually really understand what these children face until you walk inside one of these pit toilet buildings, where the walls are crumbling, often the roof is gone, the doors have long gone, the whatever they put over the hole is often inadequate. Sometimes it's plank, sometimes it's plastic crate, sometimes it may look like a toilet. The seats are long gone, and very often the contents of the pit toilet are almost at the top of where the seat is. So you can imagine the flies, the worms, the stench. They're not sealed, these are open. And the buildings that they're in are often very dark, where there is, there's no lighting or anything there. So as the child goes in, because so many children are so scared, they actually don't end up going anywhere near the toilet. So you've got all the smell and all the stuff to wade through. There is no toilet paper, so it's like, newspaper at best. So these toilets fill quite quickly. But just that overwhelming stench, it's almost like a very toxic gas as you go in. So the thought of a child falling down into one of these pits, it's almost impossible to get them out. I was talking to the head of NSRI, where he rescued a child from a pit, and it had to move very quickly because the air inside is very limited. Once you go down inside the pit, the matter is there's no real water for the child to tread on, because the water drains down into the soil. So you've just got the solid matter, which is like going into deep mud. So it just, it just pulls you down, and then the lack of oxygen. So a child doesn't have long, but it must be the most terrifying, awful way for any child to have to drown. And I think that's what hit us hard, is when we've actually seen them and seen the fear on the kids' faces going in. It's a traumatic experience every day, and it's a complete loss of dignity, because also for children, there's no doors, so anybody just walks in, and it's understandable why they say girls will miss, a week every month, when they've got their periods, because they don't want to go to use those toilets. So they'd miss a week of schooling. That, that adds up to a lot of absenteeism and impact on learning outcomes. So it's all connected, with disease and poor health. Diarrhea it spreads. Consequences of multiple cases of diarrhea are documented, and again, children, if they're scared to go to the toilet, they either hold it in all day as long as they can, or they resort to open defecation, or they don't drink water. So in some of the heat of these areas, of a child skipping out on water not to use a toilet, the consequences add up. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember at the 30 Years of Impact celebration that you hosted a week or two ago, in Mark's opening speech, he made a comment saying that I can't remember if it was what had inspired him to make the open call, or if it's just reflecting on day to day. But anyways, he was saying that, he sits in his bathroom, and you just take it so for granted. Like, we can go in, we have stable walls around us, a roof over our head, a very clean, hygienic way to use the bathroom. And then, like you're saying, on the other side of the spectrum, this is, there's a fear of someone falling into a pit, and such an inhumane way to lose a life. And it's, I mean, as you're speaking now, like, my stomach was knotting. Like, it's dreadful to think of. Yeah, the work that you and Mark and other organizations are doing around pit latrines has been really remarkable to see the impact from our side, working together, and just to see the images and happy kids and everyone's so excited, and kid pulling the string to flush the toilet. It's these little moments that I think we take so for granted, that giving children the opportunity to experience what should be a very dignified way of living and learning. I'm also quite curious, and more for the people who are listening who aren't all too familiar with Breadline and the work you're doing. Maybe you could just chat us through the link between Breadline and pit latrines, and the impact that Breadline hopes to achieve.
No, sure. So, as you mentioned, now it's the 30th anniversary recently. So over the years, Breadline started providing infrastructure quite an early stage. I think one of the first containers that were put out there was in 93. And the need for educational infrastructure became very evident, because it is particularly for ECDs to help them get to registration, or to help them to increase enrollment. Infrastructure is expensive. And so what happens is, they put up sort of shacks, or anything that they can find with building materials that are available, but they often then are not waterproof, and they're not conducive for a child to learn in. So we realized that one of the big stumbling blocks for registration was the infrastructure wasn't up to standard. And that's where Breadline started focusing more and more on educational infrastructure. So having done a wide range of different things, including even clinics and units for growing vegetables, etc. So it did absolutely everything. Breadline then said, no, let's focus on the younger child. And that's where classrooms, kitchens, and toilets for ECDs became more and more prominent, the work that we were doing. And then also primary school libraries and feeding kitchens. Because the biggest issue, we sort of kind of always have to say, what are the challenges in South Africa? And it's children not attending ECDs, or children not being school ready. And then one of the other challenges is that even if children are at primary school, the PILS research shows that 80% can't read for meaning by the age of 10. So if a child is unable to read for meaning, it means they're not really learning at school. So you've got a whole generation of children that are not getting the support and help they need, that have no access to libraries at school. So only 20% of schools in South Africa have a functioning library. So that's where we said, if we can provide libraries and access to storybooks, we can therefore develop a love for reading, and that hope that that child picks up that storybook in their own language, or any other language that they feel comfortable in, and starts to read, is going to hopefully encourage them to keep reading, and allows them also a way out of the all the traumas of everyday life as well. So it's enter into another world. And that's really what we've been trying to do at primary schools. And therefore the pit toilets fit in quite well. It's just another form of infrastructure that will help children to learn and stay healthy and safe.
It's amazing to think that these simple things, when they aren't around, something like a library or a toilet, or access to just a good meal, how much that sets a child back on their growth. And the other side of it, to go on the more positive side, it's amazing that the support that you and the Breadline team are providing these ECDs in primary schools with, that really paving the way for children in South Africa to have more vivid imaginations, be able to read, be excited to go to school, be excited to learn, have teachers that are engaged. And it's what we need.
But add to that last other comment as well. So it's the 30 years of supplying the infrastructure, but it's also the partnerships that we've created along the way. And it's, you can put down the best infrastructure, but if the teachers aren't getting the support they need in terms of training, educational materials, support to get to registration, and getting through all the red tape that's required, your infrastructure actually isn't going to do much at the end of the day, other than just provide a nice warm space for the children. So our partners play a key role in the work that we do, and also the suppliers that we work with. You've got experienced suppliers that support the work that we do, that make the difference. The right skills, the right partners, the right suppliers, the experience, and that's, that combined makes or leads to the success that we see in terms of children being better prepared for school.
And I guess to follow on to that, for anyone that is listening, how can they get involved with or follow and support the work that you and Breadline do?
Yeah, we definitely welcome that. We're on Facebook and X or Twitter, Instagram, so all at Breadline Africa. And our website is, obviously breadlineafrica.org. There's a lot of information about the projects that we have done, but the ones that we also want to do. And if anybody wants to donate, any amount will make a difference. Just as little as 1,300 Rand will provide one child access to a safe and dignified toilet experience. So if anybody wants to undertake a fundraising event, a walk, a coffee morning, swim, run, cycle event, we'd be very happy to help set that up and support you through it. So yeah, reach out either via any one of our social media channels or to any one of us, and we'd be happy to chat through options. But as I say, I mean, just absolutely any amount helps us.
That's great. I'll definitely be calling you up for open water swim, Marion. We'll do it in the Atlantic, nice and cold. And just in closing, what would be 3 points of advice you would offer listeners who are wanting to be in the community development space?
Number one, I would say, is follow your passion. It's a great mantra, and I think you need to discover what drives you, what you enjoy doing, and what brings for you a sense of purpose. For everyone, it's going to be slightly different. What motivates you, what fulfills you. And then if you're working within communities, sort of the advice is very much to listen and learn about the community's needs, the culture, their values. It's very easy to make assumptions and get it wrong. We think that's what they need. We think that's what they'll like. And it isn't like that. So, I mean, obviously you follow norms and standards when it comes to infrastructure, but when you're doing something within the community, if you don't get community acceptance and buy-in to what you're doing and support, then whatever you place is actually not going to work. I've spoken about collaboration. Collaboration is so important, and not duplicating the work that other people are doing, because together we're stronger. But if we try and replicate and compete for funding by doing exactly the same thing, it isn't going to work. But collaboration and empowerment, where I've said we really value the partners that we work with, and leveraging our collective strengths, to give the ECD centres and also the schools the type of support that they need. And then also, another third piece of advice would be, is be adaptable and flexible in your approach. So 10 years ago, we never ever thought we'd be doing pit toilets, but this is where we see is the biggest crisis at the moment at schools in South Africa. So be adaptable and learn along the way, and identify and measure the impact. And if you can't actually identify and measure the impact, then don't do it.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks very much, Marion, for sharing your story and journey. For those listening, we'll include all links and references discussed today in the episode show notes. This has been an Impact Insiders podcast powered by Relative Impact. Subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss future episodes. For more information about Relative Impact and the work we're doing, check out our website and sign up to our newsletters to get updates directly to your inbox.